If you aren't seeing success in real estate, chances are it comes down to just one of these 5 areas. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos about the one reason that agents fail or the main reason that agents fail. The reality is that it's usually not just any one thing that goes wrong. It's going to be a series of things that have to all happen in order for a business to actually thrive and to get to a point where income is being generated. In this video, I want to walk you through those exact 5 areas that you need to succeed in order to have a successful career in real estate. And by the way, if we haven't met before, my name is Slav. I've trained hundreds of realtors in this industry. I've been a high producing agent and I run a team of over 30 agents currently. So let's get into this and talk about these 5 very important areas. If at the end of this video, you can take away a little bit from each one and implement this into your business and make sure that no specific area is going wrong for you, your chance of success is going to be significantly higher. To start, let's identify these 5 most critical areas. The first one is going to be having a solid business plan. Now, what I'm talking about here is you figuring out exactly what you're going to be doing. How do you want to generate leads? Are you going to be using a CRM? You should be. What kind of CRM is it going to be? What are you going to be doing in terms of putting in money into the business? How much time do you have? All of these things need to be figured out in order for you to have a cohesive plan. Imagine building a house without a blueprint. You're going to end up with a door that doesn't lead anywhere. You're going to end up lacking windows in certain rooms. It's not going to be a very nice house that people are going to want. You don't want your business to not have a blueprint. So this is where the business plan comes into play. The second thing here is going to be the prospecting. And I'm going to have a link down in the description for a video that I created specifically about prospecting to help you understand how you can have an effective strategy. Prospecting is the lifeblood of your business. This is where you go out and you find leads, and then you're going to want to turn them into clients. So the third piece here is going to be lead conversion. This is your ability to take leads and turn them into clients. Just because somebody said, I'm looking for a house, doesn't mean that they're going to be buying that house with you. They could easily end up with another agent, or even worse, they might end up with no agent and they could represent themselves. And we know that in most cases, that is not going to be in the interest of the client, because realtors who are good at their job, who are able to provide high value, are always going to be a net positive to any home buying or home selling equation. All right, the fourth one here is closing. We need to be able to close leads. You can't just show somebody forever. That doesn't make sense. You have to at some point close that transaction and you have to move on to the next one. We're going to break all of these down, and closing is a very important one. The final one is going to be nurturing your database. So we're going to put nurture database. The idea behind here is that once you've spoken with somebody, maybe you've even converted them into a client and you've done a transaction, you don't simply forget about that person. They go into your database and you're going to be nurturing them for the rest of your career. We're going to break all of these 5 areas down, and I'm going to explain exactly what you need to be doing and where things frequently go wrong. So the idea here is, if in any single one of these areas, like business plan or lead conversion or nurturing, if things don't work and you aren't doing it correctly, your business is not going to work very well. You might scrape by, you might get some deals done, but you're never going to be in a position where you're truly happy with your business, where it's truly meeting all of your goals, and financially, you may not be satisfied. So the goal of this video is to make sure that everybody has all the tools that they need in order to be able to be successful from start to finish. Okay, let's dive into the business plan side of things. Now, again, like I said earlier, this is where you're going to be making some key decisions about how you're going to be tackling real estate, finding clients, all of those things. So let's break this down. This is the general direction which your business is going to be heading in. If you don't know the destination, you're not going to arrive at the destination. You're going to arrive somewhere randomly, and you don't want that. So how are you going to be generating leads? This is where we need to decide what are going to be our key prospecting strategies. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're doing a little bit of door knocking one day, then you're going to do some cold calling, then you're going to throw those out and you're just going to do online leads, and then maybe the next day you're just going to do open houses. You have to commit to a certain extent, and you have to make sure that you're putting in enough work to get really good at each one of those things, or you're simply going to be bumbling about and you're not going to see a lot of success. So we do need a cohesive strategy for how we're going to be generating leads. Time allocation. Now, when we're talking time allocation, where are you putting your hours? And also tracking your hours. If you are spending a lot of time on things that don't move the needle forward, like screwing around with your business cards, making websites that are pointless, a website that doesn't have PPC or SEO or something that's driving traffic to that website, it's a dead website. Your mother's going to see it, your friends are going to see it, but that's about it. Because people aren't naturally going to go online and find your website unless you have a very specific funnel to make that happen. So if we are going down that road, you can definitely do it, but ask yourself, how am I going to make sure that I'm driving traffic to this website? Okay, we need to decide which CRM we're going to be using. A CRM is very important. A lot of people don't use CRMs, and I think it's very much to their downside. A good agent will always have a CRM, and they will always have their leads in that CRM. They will have reminders. They're going to have everything in the right places tucked away. Think about it like this. If you're a brand new agent and you're talking to maybe 3 to 5 people, it's very easy to keep it all up in here because there's really not that much to remember. Now, what's going to happen when you're in the business for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're constantly adding people to your database, but you aren't tracking them in the CRM? You're not tracking the conversations you had with them. You're not planning on when you're going to be following up. Those people are going to fall through the cracks and you will lose leads. You will lose deals. I know because it's happened to me. I've lost many deals throughout my career, especially at the beginning when I wasn't on top of my CRM. So never underestimate the importance of a CRM. It is critical. Okay, and the last one here is going to be the necessary marketing materials. We want to know what exactly is our game plan and how are we going to be attracting buyers and sellers. And if there's specific marketing materials that we need to have on hand to make that happen, let's get those marketing materials into play. Let's not leave it until the last moment. Let's not scrape something together that just doesn't look very attractive and doesn't convert. Let's have it in place so that we can put it to use and we can convert at a very high rate. All of these things are going to be together your business plan. There's a lot more that's going to be going into this. And the goal of this video isn't to absolutely go over every single piece of each of these 5 critical areas of real estate. I want to give you an overview because I want things to flow. I want you to have a picture of all of these together. I'm going to have separate videos where I'm going to be doing deep dives into each and every one of these sections a little bit more. All right, let's move on and let's talk about prospecting. Like I said earlier, prospecting is the lifeblood of your business. If you don't prospect, nothing's going to happen because you don't have anybody that you can then convert and sell homes to. This is where everything really starts, with leads. All right, so there are 3 key things that we are going to be talking about right here. First of all, it's going to be the scripting. You need to know what to say. So what do you actually say? Let's say that you're cold calling or you're doing an open house. You want to have a strategy. You want to have a rough outline of what a good conversation should look like. If you don't have that outline, you're going to have meandering conversations that don't really lead anywhere. Here's the key. Any conversation that doesn't move you toward getting their contact information, that doesn't move you toward getting as much information about their home search and giving you the ability to show value and build rapport is not a good conversation. That is a conversation that isn't going to lead anywhere. So when it comes to this, we need to make sure we know what to say and we have a clear strategy, and we should be practicing. You don't want to practice on leads live. You want to practice at home when the stakes are very low, when you can't simply lose a client because you say the wrong thing. All right, the second thing here is going to be going out and actually doing it. Now, I know this sounds a little bit silly, but I promise you, the number one reason that people don't succeed at prospecting is they simply don't do it. I've been doing this long enough where I've seen plenty of agents tell me that, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do ABC. Okay, just watch. I'm going to get all these leads, I'm going to do all this business. And then a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and I ask, okay, tell me, how is it going? Well, I haven't had a chance yet. So it's a lack of prioritization, and it's a lack of pushing yourself to leave your comfort zone. It's very easy to say, I'm going to go out and door knock a bunch of doors and then never do it. In fact, most people, that's exactly what they do. They say they're going to do it, but then they don't do it. They come up with excuses. This will kill your career. Whatever prospecting you're committing to, if you don't actually do it, and you don't actually do it consistently, that's the third piece here, Nothing's going to happen. And this is where most agents fail in real estate. When we throw those numbers out, if you've talked to anybody in real estate who knows what they're talking about, they'll tell you 80 to 90% of realtors fail. Why is that? Well, this right here, this entire thing is where agents start to fail. They just don't prospect. They don't know what to say. They don't practice. They're not consistent. So if you're not doing these things, already your business is off to a very rocky start, and your chance of success, I'm sorry to say, is going to be very, very low. This is absolutely critical. Now, when it comes to actually doing it, we want to make sure, again, that we have a plan for how we're going to be doing it. We need to be time blocking. So I'm going to put here time blocking. If you are planning to go out on Wednesday, put it into your calendar between 9 and 11:30. All I'm doing is prospecting. I'm not taking client calls. I'm not screwing around on TikTok. I'm not doing anything else. All I'm doing is this one very specific thing that is going to help me build my business. Consistency, we have to track. The only way to know if you're being consistent is you need to have a spreadsheet or whatever it is that you want to use. Not everybody loves spreadsheets, but you got to track how many hours am I putting into this thing. Don't lie to yourself. I see way too many people doing this. Don't trick yourself into thinking you're working when really you're spending 3 hours a week on prospecting and dicking around for the rest of the week. It kills way too many businesses. All right, that's the prospecting side. Up next, let's talk about lead conversion. Now, when we're talking about lead conversion, this is the piece where you've now found somebody that has said, I want to buy a house. That is now a lead. But a lead is not a client because they haven't committed to working with you. You have to convert them into a client. This is where lead conversion comes into effect. You may have heard this before, and I think that this is a very good saying. So in order for somebody to work with you, they need to do a few things. Number one, they need to know you. They need to like you. And they need to trust you. And I think that this holds true. I think that each one of these has to be met in order for you to be able to convert leads successfully. Now, where a lot of the training kind of breaks down is explaining exactly how to achieve all of these things. It's one thing for me to tell you, you need to get people to know, like, and trust you, but it's another thing for me to tell you, well, how do you do that? What effective strategies can you have to make this happen? Well, okay, so when we're talking about no, it's just going to be time. It's going to be number of touches. So it could be phone calls, it could be texts, it could be emails. The more that you're kind of hanging around in their world, the more they get to know you. This is more just a matter of consistency and doing it over a long period of time and having a solid follow-up plan. When it comes to liking, this is where you need to build rapport. And what I'm talking about when it comes to rapport is you getting to know this person as a human. They're not just a lead. They're a real person. They have a personality. You need to have a solid connection with this person. You need to know their kids. You need to know about their kids. You don't need to meet their kids. You need to know about their pets. You need to know about their lifestyles. You need to learn this person and learn what is important to them. What is driving them? Why do they want a house? And you can't be a robot. This is where I think a lot of scripting doesn't work very well because scripting is, well, it's very scripted. You're going to sound very robotic. And a lot of scripting goes like this. How many bedrooms do you need? How big should the house be? Do you need a basement? Do you need a garage? And it's just questions that are helping you better understand the search, but it does nothing to create a connection between you and that person. So we need to make sure that we're having human-to-human interactions. The way that you would speak to a friend, take some of those elements, move those into your conversations with leads, and that's going to help you build rapport. Find out about them as people, talk about yourself as a person, find commonalities, and really build that relationship. That is called rapport building. That is how you get people to like you. Now, the one caveat I have here is if you study DISC, which you should, DISC profiling system is one of the most important things to having a successful real estate career because you're dealing with people. If you're talking to high Ds and high Cs, these are more task-oriented people. You're not going to do quite as much rapport building as you would with a high I and a high S. So you do have to ask yourself, who is the person in front of me and what amount of rapport building is appropriate and when are they just going to start getting sick of me? If all you're doing with a high D or a high C is talking about their cats or talking about their lifestyle, they're going to get annoyed with you because that's not what they want to focus on. The last one here is trust. Trust is probably the most difficult thing to build for most agents. This is where you need to show value. Now, what does it mean to show value? Well, you as an agent, just remember, you have no inherent value. Just because you have a license, unless this person doesn't know any other realtors, and they've never come across any other realtors, you don't really have a lot of inherent value. You are a commodity. You can be easily replaced. So you have to make yourself irreplaceable. A lot of the time, what showing value and creating trust comes down to is you actually knowing what the hell you're talking about. If you have a client looking in community A, all right, well, you need to know community A. How old are the homes there? What are the typical price points? Who lives there? What are some of the downsides? You don't just want to talk up all the best parts about a community. You need to talk about some of the downsides. This is where you start building trust, where you aren't acting as just a salesperson. You're acting as a trusted advisor. And a trusted advisor doesn't simply go in and say, everything is amazing. Buy this home. This is the best. A trusted advisor will talk about the downsides, and every house is going to have downsides. Maybe it's backing you onto a busy road. Maybe you know that the builder that built the home isn't the highest quality and there's going to be issues down the road. Maybe you know that the area has very poor resale. Maybe the price is too high. All of these are things that you can talk about to create trust. Now, once you've done the knowing, the liking, and the trusting, once you've established those things, these are going to help you with showings and CMAs, because that's how you're interacting with buyers. You take them out on showings, and with sellers, you're going to be doing listing presentations or CMAs, whatever you call them. If all three of these elements are present when you're doing these things, you are now going to have a much higher chance of converting that lead into a client. All right, the next step, let's talk about closing. And here there are a few very important things to understand. I think that closing is misunderstood. I have seen a lot of agents talk about how they just want to close leads as soon as possible. And this is good, but it's also bad. You want to close quickly, but you can't close when you're not in a position to close. So here's what I mean by that. If you've ever heard always be closing ABC, I want you to take that and I want you to throw it out the window. There is some merit to this advice, but I really don't like it because I think it's very misleading. A lot of people assume that the moment that you meet somebody, you need to start closing them, and that is not how this works. That is not how you build a long, successful business. That is what people do at car dealerships, because you may only have 15 to 20 minutes to convince somebody to buy a car, or they're going to another dealership and they're gone. Real estate is very different. As a realtor, you're going to have access to every single property in your area. There could be some off markets, there could be some niche scenarios, but in most cases, you're going to have access to an MLS system and you are going to have access to every single property. So you don't have to convince this person to buy with you or to buy a house in the first 15 minutes, because they're not just going to walk out and go somewhere else if you're doing everything else right. If you're saying the right things, if you are showing value, if you're building rapport, you're going to be able to convert this person. It doesn't have to be in the first 15, 20 minutes. Buying a house can take quite a while. Some people will take a year to make a decision. And if you push them too hard at that very first meeting, or maybe the second meeting, they're going to run away from you because they just don't trust you enough and they're not ready to buy a house. They need to look around more. They need to be very comfortable. So ABC isn't always very good advice. You shouldn't always be closing. You always need to close at some point, but you got to be strategic about when you begin. You need to put yourself into a position to close. And this is where they know you, they like you, they trust you, you've showed them enough properties, you're at a point where you can now close. Yes, you need to close. Okay. The other point to talk about here is showings do not equal transactions. Just because you're out showing does not mean that you're making money. You can take somebody out 1,000,000 times, show them all these homes, but unless they write an offer and unless that offer is accepted and goes to completion, you don't get paid. This is where closing becomes very important. And in order to ensure that you aren't showing forever, you need to do a process of elimination, especially for buyers who are really struggling making decisions. So I'll give you an example. I've had clients that are looking at everything. They say, we like the north, we like the south, we like the inner city, we like apartments, we like townhomes, we like single family. It's like, okay, whoa, we can't look at everything, guys. It's gonna take us 5 years to find you a house. So we need to start taking them through a process of elimination. My initial set of showings, let's say that I'm showing 5 properties. At the end of every single property, I'm asking guys, what do you think about this home? Are there any deal breakers? What would you give this home out of 10 for how much you like it? I'm looking for things that are going to help me eliminate certain properties. They might say, well, we really like this house, but it's backing onto a busy road. I'm going to say, okay, is that a big deal for you guys? They're going to say, yeah, it doesn't really work. Okay, no worries. Here's what I think. Next time we go out, let's eliminate all homes that are backing onto busy roads. I don't want you guys wasting your time on this. In the future, if they ever send you another property that's backing onto a busy road, you're going to remind them and say, guys, remember when we talked about this? We shouldn't be looking at this home. It's not going to work for us. And you're going to eliminate that home. So you need to have an active process of elimination, and you need to help your clients understand what they don't like about properties with the right questions. Highlight those things, and then make sure that you don't show them those homes anymore. So as you're eliminating things, you're narrowing the field down, and eventually they're not going to feel like there's a million options. They're going to feel like there's one, maybe two or three really good options, and you're going to be able to now close. This is something that takes a while to learn. It's not going to happen immediately, but the better you are at the process of elimination and really guiding people to where they should be looking and what they should be looking at, the easier everything becomes. All right, the final thing here is you may need to reiterate value. This is actually quite important, and this is where you may need to reiterate your own value. If you're at a CMA, you need to reiterate what are all the things you bring to the table before you're able to close. Or with buyers, you may need to reiterate the value of a specific property. Guys, remember we took a look at all these other properties. None of them were at this price. None of them had this square footage. And this is probably the nicest one. I'm not so sure we're going to be finding something else quite like this if we continue to search. That again helps put you in a position to close. There's a lot more nuance to closing, but I do want to move on and talk about the final piece of this 5-piece puzzle. And this is going to be the database nurturing. So you've taken a client from start to finish. So first you built your business, then you started prospecting. So you found some leads, you converted those leads into clients, and then you closed those clients. Great. You now have money. You now have money coming in. What we want to make sure is that the amount of money you're getting and the amount of effort you're putting into the business continues to be advantageous, meaning that you can't have a business where you're putting in 80 to 100 hours a week for the rest of your life. That's a terrible business. You're going to burn out. Nobody wants to do that. So we want to make this as easy as possible. We're going to be taking people who worked with you, who you closed, and we need to get repeat business from them, and we need to get referrals from them. This is how you grow a business that goes up like this. So imagine that every year you're going out and you're hustling the same amount for the same amount of business. Your business is going to grow like this, right? Your numbers aren't increasing every single year. But if you're getting referrals, if you're getting repeat business, that means you have to do less prospecting. It means you have to do less work. Now your business starts growing like this, where every year you're doing more and more and more transactions. And that's exactly what you need for a long-term sustainable business that you're going to be happy with, because you don't want to get burnt out. That's not fun. Okay, every single lead has to go into the CRM. I already talked about this before, but I just want to re-emphasize this. If a lead has closed with you, they should be in the CRM, and you should be following up with them. You should be continuously providing them value. They need to remember who you are, or else they will forget. I promise you they will forget, and they will list their home with somebody else a few years down the road, and you're going to miss out on that transaction. So maintaining contact after closing and continuing to provide value. Now, the last thing I want to point out here is this number 5 to 7. This is how many transactions every single client is worth over the course of a lifetime of a career. If you're going to be in real estate for a very long time, every single transaction that you do should lead to an additional 5 to 7 transactions, repeat business and referrals. If this isn't happening, you're doing something wrong. You could be simply doing a poor job, and maybe you're not following up very well. Maybe your clients aren't happy after the closing because you disappeared. Maybe you dropped the ball at the very end. There's a lot to be said for follow through. It's one thing for you to take somebody from the top of the funnel, get them all the way to the closing of a transaction. It's another thing to make sure that the customer service is top notch. You're there throughout the entire way, and they never feel like they're on their own. And on top of that, you're also talking to them far after the transaction is closed, and you're continuing to build that relationship. This is how you ensure that your business has longevity. A lot of agents burn out when they miss this very critical step. Between these 5 specific areas of real estate, if you can master these, or if you can become at least very competent and proficient in them, now you can have a business. If there's a problem at any one step along the way, your business is going to suffer. You're probably not going to be very happy with your business. You have to figure out a way to patch that gap and make sure that you can move forward and be successful.